Hey, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to explain how to create a turntable rendering like this one for your demo reel or just to post online to show off your models. I'm going to be covering a lot of ground in this one, including wireframe rendering and video editing. So let's get into it. So here's the model I'm going to be using for this rendering. And you can see that I have it sitting at the origin, which will make it really easy to set up for the rendering. For lighting, I've set up these three area lights. I have a key light with the color set to a light yellow, a fill light set to a light blue, and a rim light set to a light red. So with all of that out of the way, I'll hit Shift A and add a camera. And it's going to drop in at the location of the 3D cursor here at the origin. But that doesn't really matter because I'm going to pan around until I get the view that I want. Then I'll hold down Control and Alt and hit 0 on the number pad. And that will move the camera to align with my current view. Next, I'll open up the side menu, go to View, and enable camera to view. And this will keep the camera stationary while I continue to move around inside the camera view to fine-tune the angle and get it set exactly how I want it for the rendering. Now, there are two different ways to do a turntable rendering. You can either have the model spin around in front of the camera, or you can have the camera rotate around the model. And I think it's easier and less problematic to rotate the camera around the model, so that's the procedure I'm going to cover in this video. So now I'm going to hit 0 on the number pad to jump out of camera view, and then hit Shift A and add an empty sphere, or whatever type of empty you want. And that will drop in at the origin, but it's a little big, so I'm going to reduce the radius to 0.5, and I'm going to name it Camera Height Adjustment. Next, I'll hit Shift A and add a curve circle. And I'm going to scale it out to the approximate location of my camera. And move it up so it's just below the camera. And I want the camera to move around the model in the counterclockwise direction. So in order for that to happen, I need to rotate the circle 180 degrees. If I don't rotate the circle, the camera will move around the model in the clockwise direction. And now I need to click on the camera to select it and then shift click on the circle, then hit Control P and choose Follow Path. This will link the camera to the circle as a path for it to follow. As you can see, if I drag out a new window here and switch to timeline, now I can hit the play button and the camera will start moving and following the path. Next, I'll select the camera and go to the Object Constraint Properties, and then I'll choose Track 2, and then I'll click on the eyedropper and select the empty as the object for the camera to track to. And this will make sure that the camera will always point at the empty as it moves around the circle. And the reason I use an empty instead of the barrel is so I can move the empty up or down to adjust the camera view. So if I hit 0 on the number pad to jump back into camera view, you can see that the camera is now tilted down looking at the empty. So if I click on the empty, I can adjust my view by raising it up. So I'm going to set the empty somewhere around the center of the barrel like that. Now if I hit play, I feel like the camera is moving a little fast, so I'm going to select the circle path and then head over to Object Data Properties and go to Path Animation and change the number of frames to 300. And then I'll go to the Object Properties and set the end frame to 300. And now if I hit play, the camera is moving a little slower, which I like better. And the last thing I'll do is go to World Properties and set the color to black. And I'll change my viewport shading to rendered display. So that's about it in terms of setup. In the output properties, I'm going to set the resolution at 2560 by 1440. And I'll set the frame rate to 30 because I think the video looks a little smoother if you do that than the default 24. I'll specify the folder for saving my files here, and I'll set the file format to PNG. I don't like saving to a video format, so I save out each frame as a single image, and then I compile them into a video after the rendering finishes. In the render properties, I'll make sure that I'm set to cycles and GPU compute. I'll set the noise threshold to 0.1 and enable denoise. I'll come down here to performance, final render, and enable persistent data. This is important because it tells Blender to keep the render data in memory, which helps to reduce the overall render time for each frame. So now I'll hit save, and then I'll come up here to the render menu and select render animation. Or you can hold down the control key and hit F12, and Blender will start rendering out the frames. Okay, so now it's done rendering out all the image frames. So I'm going to close the render window and then save and close my file. Then I'll open up a new Blender file and go to File, New, Video Editing. In the bottom sequencer window, go to Add Image Sequence. Then browse to the folder where your rendered images are located and click on the first image to select it. Then scroll down to the bottom and shift-click on the last image to select all the images. Then click the Add Image Strip button. And now you need to make sure the X and Y resolution matches the resolution you rendered the video at. Make sure the frame rate matches the frame rate you rendered. Make sure the end frame matches the end frame you rendered. Then set the output folder to the location where you want to save the video. Set the file format to FFmpeg video. Set the encoding container to MPEG-4. Set the video codec to H.264. Set the output quality to medium quality and encoding speed to good. And now you can go to the render menu and select render animation or hit Control F12. And that's it. Now you have a turntable rendering. But one thing you might want to do is create a wireframe rendering to show off your topology and integrate that into your turntable rendering. So I'm going to close this file. No need to save it. And I'll open my project file back up. And the first thing I'm going to do is hide this guy. And also I'm going to hide the leaking liquid and also the decals because I only want the wireframe of the barrel and the base to be visible. And you want to make sure to also hide these things from the camera too. Otherwise, they're still going to be visible to the camera and they'll get rendered again. Next, I'm going to create a material override. So I'll go to the layer properties and scroll down to override. And for the material override, I'm going to choose this clay material that I created earlier. If I switch to the shading tab, you can see that it's just a basic material with the color set to a very slight orange and the roughness set down to about 350. And that's it. This material is now overriding all the materials in the scene. Now I'll go to the render properties, scroll down to the bottom, and enable freestyle. And then I'll go back to the layer properties, scroll down to the freestyle line set section, and uncheck silhouette, crease, and border, and check edge mark. Now I'm going to jump over to the modeling tab and switch to shaded mode because I need to select all the edges of the model. Now, the easiest way I've found to do this is to temporarily hide the lights, camera, and empty. Make sure you're in object mode and then hit A to select everything. Next, I'll hit Tab and choose Edge, and that will make all your edges visible on all the parts of the model. And now I'll hit Alt-Z to switch to X-ray mode, and then I'll window select all the edges. Then right-click and choose Mark Freestyle Edge. And now I'll hit Alt-Z to exit X-ray mode, and I'll turn the lights and camera back on. And I'll hit 0 on the number pad to jump back into camera view. And if I hit F12 to render, I get this, which is great, but I think the line thickness is a bit much. So I'll go back over to the layer properties and scroll down to the freestyle thickness, and I'll change the thickness to 1 and render again. And I think that looks much better. You can also change the freestyle color. If you don't want black, you can set it to something else, like blue or whatever. I'll keep mine at black though. And now that I have all that done, my render settings are still the same as before. So I just need to change the folder where I want the images to be saved, and then hit save and go to render animation. And it's going to take quite a bit longer than the textured rendering because it has to do the extra pass to add the wireframe at the end. The textured rendering took about 8 seconds per frame, but this one looks like it's going to take about 15 seconds per frame. So I'll be back when it's done. Okay, it's finished rendering now. So I'll do the same thing as before. I'll save and close this file. Open up a new file, go into video editing, and do all the same steps that I did for the textured render. If you don't remember how I did that, just go back and watch that section of the video again because it's the exact same process. So now I have a textured video and a wireframe video, but I need to merge them together into one video file. And to do that, I'm going to use a free video editing program called Kdenlive. I'll put a link to the website in the description below if you want to download it. So here I am in Kdenlive, and the first thing I want to do is go to the project menu and go to project settings, and I need to set my frame rate to match the turntable renderings. So I'll choose HD 1080p 30 FPS and hit OK. Now I'm going to drag and drop my videos into the project bin up here in the upper left corner. And then I'm going to save this project, and I'll call it Turntable. Next, I'm going to drag the textured rendering down here and drop it on the timeline. And it currently has an audio track, but I don't need that, so I'll click on the track and it will highlight in orange so you know that it's selected. Then I'll right-click and choose Ungroup Clips, and now I can select the audio track and delete it. Next, I'll drag the wireframe clip down and do the same thing. Select it, right-click, ungroup, and delete. And now if I hit play, the video starts and the turntable starts spinning. But when it gets to the end of the textured clip, it immediately cuts to the wireframe, which is not what I want. So I'm going to drag the wireframe clip up to the V2 track above and snap it to the end of the textured clip. Now, to get the clips to seamlessly fade in and out, I need to duplicate this textured clip a couple times. So I'll go back up to the project bin, select the textured clip, right-click, and duplicate clip. And I'll drag the duplicate down and delete the audio track again. And then I'll duplicate the clip one more time. Drag the duplicate down and delete the audio again. Now, to make the video fade in and out, if you hover your cursor in the upper left corner of the wireframe clip, you'll see this little green circle appear. So just click and drag it over. And then if you do the same thing in the upper right corner, you'll get a red circle. So click and drag it over. And now, when you hit play, you'll get a seamless transition from one clip to the other, fading into the wireframe and then fading out and back to the textured rendering. Another thing you can do would be to add some music, but you need to make sure you use royalty-free music. Otherwise, if you post your video on YouTube, they're probably going to give you a copyright strike. So, one good place to find free music to use in your videos is on YouTube. Just go to your channel and then go to the audio library and browse through the list of available music. I downloaded this one called Highway Nocturne. So now back in Kdenlive, just drag and drop the music track into the project bin, then drag and drop it down into the audio track. Now you can see that it's way too long, so I'm going to use the razor tool to clip it right at the end here, and then I'll delete the rest of it. And I'm also going to fade it in and fade it out, the same as I did for the wireframe video. And I'm going to fade in and fade out on the video too. And one last thing you might want to do is add some text. And to do that, just come up to the project bin and right-click down here below your last clip and choose Add Title Clip. Now, in this window, you can choose the font you want to use, set the text size, color, bold, underline, italic, etc. So just click anywhere inside the viewport and start typing out your text. So I'll just type in my name, and when you're done typing, just move your cursor away and click out here somewhere. Now, the problem I have right now is that I can't see my video in the window because it starts out black, so I don't know where to place my text. So I'm going to click Create Title. Then I'll come down here and drag the timeline slider to where I can see the video. Then go back to the title clip, right-click, and Edit Clip. And now I can see where the text is in relation to the video. But if you can't see your video in this window, make sure you have Show Background checked. If it's not checked, you won't see anything in this window. So I'm going to click and drag the text up here in the corner. And if I double click on it, I can add some more information. So I'm going to type in the name of this model. But you can see that it's aligned right and I need it aligned left. So I just need to come over here and click this button to align left. And then I'm going to add a little more information, like the software I used and how I rendered it. And I'll need to drag it back over to make sure I'm inside the frame here. And I think I want it to be italic. I think that looks pretty good. So I'll click Update Title. Now I need to add it to the video. So I'll drag it down here on track 2. And again, I want it to fade in. And I also want it to stay on screen for a while. So I'm going to grab the edge and drag it out to maybe here. And then I want it to also fade out. And I'm going to shift it over so it doesn't start right away. So once you have all that, you can come over here and hit play to make sure it looks good. But I've already checked it and it looks fine to me, so I'm going to go ahead and render out the video. And to do that, I'm going to come up to the project menu and click render. And I'm going to choose the MP4 H.264 AAC, and then I'll click render to file. And after a few seconds, your video will be ready to watch. And here's the final video. Okay, that was a really long video. So if you stuck with it until the end, I want to thank you for watching. And if you found it helpful, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And if you have any questions, feel free to post them below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So yeah, thanks again for watching and I'll see you on the next one.